Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, True Crime Stories. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can hear more. Thanks for stopping by. I want to give a quick introduction to this video. This video turned out to be a whole lot longer than what I thought when I first started working on it. There's a part of this where I start telling the story about another person who was a resident at this place that I'm talking about in this story. I didn't go into all the details about his story because it would have made this video twice as long. But I am planning on coming back and doing a follow-up on that. And just watch for part 2 of this. That's all I'm going to say, is I'm just going to come back and I'm going to tell more details about his story and about some of the investigation and stuff that went on. There were so many stories that I could have shared, so many links. It would have taken me days and days, and it took me long enough to put this one together as it was. But I just wanted to say that. So there will be a part 2, and it will focus more or less just on this one man's story. And I hope that you'll stick around and watch. This is from Crime Facts. A 14-year-old boy, frustrated with a ruckus at his school, limped toward a barn 15 years ago and vanished into the night. To this day, no one knows what happened to Blake Pursley, but his mother holds out hope that she will eventually find out what happened to her son. So now this is Blake Wade Pursley. He's been missing since June 27, 1994. He is a white male, 5 foot 5 inches tall, around 125 pounds. He has blue eyes and brown hair. He was last known to be wearing blue jeans, a purple shirt, white and black. He was wearing black baseball cap with the White Sox logo on it and a pair of tennis shoes. It doesn't say the color. He has scars on his right knee, his chest, his back, and his left buttock. His left leg is shorter, and he walks with a limp. Now, that must have been why they said he ran off with a limp. Dental x-rays are available. He was last seen June 27th, 1994. Blake Wade Pursley was a teenage boy who vanished from the Cedu School in 1994. John Inman and Daniel Yuen also went missing from the school in 1993 and 2004. The Cedu School was a private company that operated a network of controversial therapeutic boarding schools and behavior modification for troubled teens from 1967 until it was closed in 2005. The Cedu's model was heavily based on methods used by a cult, included attack therapy, hard labor, and sleep deprivation. They were often situated in isolated locations located in California and Idaho. It made it very difficult for anyone to escape. Students were usually there for around 2 years and had very little contact with the outside world. The Cedu Educational Services was founded by Mel Wasserman. In 1998, the company was purchased by Brown Schools in 2005 after multiple lawsuits alleging abuse and state regulatory crackdowns. Brown Schools filed for bankruptcy. The schools were widely considered the origin of the troubled teen industry. The programs faced numerous allegations of abuse, including emotional, physical, and verbal mistreatment. At least 2 students, Blake Wade Pursley and John Inman, disappeared from the school in the 1990s and have never been found. So it's obvious that there was a lot of controversy around this school, and I found another article that goes into more detail about many lawsuits that were brought against the school. Now, this was originally a working ranch. There were 28 people living there, and they had been given a nonprofit status, and they were actively soliciting donations. They bought a townhouse in San Bernardino. In 1973, a news article brought light to this. It was reporting that students were being assigned jobs such as construction, kitchen duties, landscaping, plumbing. So basically they were saying that these students were being made to work like manual labor jobs, not just for discipline, but to help save them money, I guess, on having to pay someone to come in and do these jobs. In 1993, John Christopher Inman goes missing. In 1994, Blake Wade Pursley goes missing. He was reported to have last been seen at about 8 p.m. when he went out to the barn to check on the animals. In 1994, a male client, they call it a client, but it's a student, hanged himself from a belt. In 1994, it was revealed that former employee and a white supremacist had planned to kidnap students. They were also later sued for fraud, racketeering, and battery. Another lawsuit says that this couple that sued said that their son had been beaten and abused while he was there. An actor and a comedian talks about his experiences on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He described the place as a place of child endangerment. He talks about it was an abusive cult. So back to Blake Pursley, Missing Persons Wikipedia. Blake went missing on June the 26th, 1994 from Running Springs, California. He was 14 years old. When Blake was born in 1979, when he was 3 years old, he fell into a vat. It was a cattle vat. So it was a thing where cattle, I guess, would go down in and they would walk them through and spray them and medicate them as they were walking through this trench. And he fell into that and he was injured. He needed a tracheotomy to restart his breathing, and the wound became infected, and this led to very bad infections and complications with his breathing. Because of this, he would end up with a number of disabilities. He was described as being very intelligent and empathetic, but he was also very quiet. He was last seen at the Cedu School in Running Springs, California, June 26, 1994. He had only been there for about 25 days when he disappeared. He told his mother that he was homesick and that he wanted to leave the school. Now, they said that the school was set in such a place that it would make it very difficult for anybody to escape. It's possible, I guess, that he could have tried to escape and maybe become lost. I don't know how much of a search they conducted around the area. It was discovered that he was missing. Blake was last seen as he walked into the barn to check on the animals. A staff member saw a light go on in the barn, and not long after, they went to check when Blake didn't come back. It was discovered that he was not in his dormitory at 10 p.m. at bed check. There were numerous sightings of Blake in California and Utah in 1994, 1995, but none of those were ever confirmed to actually be him. The Cedu School staff say that they believe he ran away from the school. His family believes that he was abducted or taken out of the school by someone who worked there. It is also worth noting that 2 other students disappeared from the school between 1993 and 2004. Once again, it says here that Blake has several scars on his chest and his neck, the back of his head. This was due to this injury that he suffered when he was a child. His left leg is 4 inches shorter than his right, and he walks with a noticeable limp. And he has a paralyzed vocal cord, so he speaks very quietly. He has poor motor skills on his right side. He has learning and behavioral difficulties, which I'm guessing is the reason why he was sent to this place. It was reported by staff there that he was last seen wearing a purple t-shirt, blue jeans, black sneakers, and a black White Sox baseball cap. The age progression photo here that ages him to age 32. He is a white male. He would be 46 years old today if he were alive. He was 5'5" and about 125 pounds when he was last seen. He suffers from numerous medical conditions as the result of a near-drowning accident when he was 3 years old. He is required to take medication daily for seizures. He was living at a special needs boarding school. See, they say a special needs boarding school, making it sound as though this were a place for kids who had, learning disabilities or physical limitations. But it was actually a school that was for people with disciplinary problems. People whose children maybe got into trouble at school or were fighting or drugs or something like that. And they wanted them to be disciplined. They wanted them to be basically reprogrammed, I guess is one word. Many agencies classify Blake's disappearance as a runaway. The school officials said they believe he ran away, but his parents do not believe that. John Christopher Inman, he went missing January 16th, 1993. He was considered a runaway. He was born December 7th, 1975. He would be 50 years old today. He was a very big boy. He was 6'3" and 200 pounds, and he was 17 when he disappeared. It's possible that this child could have been removed from this school as he was about to turn 18. Being such a large student, maybe they did have trouble, disciplining someone who was probably larger than some of the staff. And being that he was 18 almost, I don't know what age the student ranged from at this place, but it's possible that he was removed from there. A sweatshirt that he was known to have last been wearing said New Mexico State printed on the front. He was also reported to be wearing gray sweatpants and white Reebok sneakers. He is also supposed to take medication for seizures, and he did not have it with him. He has a shunt implanted in his skull. So just like Blake, it sounds like that he had some physical health issues, which also could have led to him being, troubled. He was a white male with brown hair and blue eyes, and he wears large glasses that had square rims. He has a scar on his abdomen. He was last seen January 16th, 1993. Authorities believe he left of his own accord. They probably didn't really look much into it. They probably saw the 17-year-old who was just tired of this place and just decided to leave. And that was what they said. But let's keep something else in mind too. There is a movie. It's a series on. I believe it was on Netflix. But it was basically very much like this. It was a school where students were sent to. They were completely detached from their families, no contact, and they were disciplined. And it sounds very much like this kind of place. If any of them tried to run away, it was so far into such a deep wooded area that they just really became lost. And the police and the whole entire town, the law enforcement, everyone in the town was kind of in their pocket. So no discipline was ever taken against them for anything that went on there. And it just kind of reminds me of that. Now it goes on to talk about the other boy, Daniel Yuen, Yuen. Daniel was last seen February the 8th, 2004. He was also listed as a runaway. He was an Asian male. He was born July 20th, 1987. He was 16 at the time that he disappeared. He was 5'6" and 125 pounds. He was last known to be wearing blue jeans, a blue jacket, and white sneakers. Daniel suffered from depression and emotional problems, and he sometimes displayed aggressive behavior. He was considered a danger to himself and others. Well, this is what they listed, as a reason why he was sent to this school. He had black hair, brown eyes. He was nearsighted, and he either wore contact lenses or wire black framed glasses. His hair was collar length, and he had blonde or red highlights in it at the time of his disappearance. Daniel is of Chinese descent. He was reported missing February the 8th, 2004. He said he was going to buy a pack of cigarettes and he never returned. Were the students allowed to just leave like that and go out into the town and shop and do what they wanted and then come back? It doesn't sound to me like in the other stories that I read about this place that was the case, that they were allowed to just come and go. He was from New Jersey, and his parents sent him there for troubled youth 10 days before he disappeared. So just like Blake had only been there about 3 weeks. This guy had only been there about a week and a half when he disappeared. He was having trouble at his high school, and he had dropped out of school. He had a breakup with his girlfriend, and he had kind of a breakdown over this, and he was suffering from depression. So his parents decided to send him to the Cedu School. He told his parents that he was unhappy there and that he was afraid of the other students. They hired a private investigator to search for Daniel, and the school declared bankruptcy and closed all of its campuses in 2005. They were being sued. They had 4 or 5 separate lawsuits filed against them, and so they filed for bankruptcy. And Daniel's family also filed a lawsuit against the school. Now, in 2018, this private investigator says he got a voicemail from an unknown person speaking about Daniel. The caller said Daniel is fine. He's still in the area where you were searching for him. He doesn't want to be found. He knows his parents are looking for him, but he just wants to be left alone. Well, this could have been somebody trying to throw this man off and trying to throw the family off by saying, there's really no basis for a lawsuit because the kid's out there. He's a young man now. He's fine. Leave him alone. And that could have just been a way for someone associated with that school or someone who knew what really happened to this Daniel. Now, the picture of him was being shown around the area, and an employee of a local park said that she thought she recognized him and that he had arrived at the park with a white woman and a little girl. But I don't think it was him. Despite reported sightings and ongoing efforts by his family, his whereabouts remain unknown. During his sophomore year of high school, he experienced a decline in mental health. This was reportedly triggered by a breakup with his girlfriend, and his parents sought psychiatric help. Following professional recommendations, they enrolled him in the Cedu School in California in late January 2004. Upon arrival, Daniel expressed that he did not want to stay at the school. School officials asked the parents to step into another room, and when they came back, they informed the parents that Daniel had changed his mind and agreed to stay at the school. Wayne and Lisa Yuen stated that they requested the opportunity to say goodbye to their son, but school staff advised against it, saying that it would be emotionally difficult. The school allowed one phone call home every week, and when Daniel called, he told his parents he was very dissatisfied with the environment. He told his parents that he was unhappy and that he was afraid of some of the other students. He told his parents, given the opportunity, that he would run away, and then he hung up the phone. They believed that the phone line was disconnected by someone who was listening in on the call. Now, on the morning of February the 8th, 2004, Daniel left the Cedu campus. Now, this is according to the people who worked, the staff at this campus. He left the campus at around 10:45, stating he was going to purchase cigarettes. He did not take any personal belongings. I don't believe this for one heartbeat, because I don't believe these children, these young people, were allowed to come and go as they pleased. I believe that they were basically prisoners here. This was more like a juvenile detention camp to me than it was a therapeutic healing center, as they like to, put out there to the parents who were dealing with a troubled child. So I don't believe he walked away on his own to go purchase cigarettes. He probably, they said that in one article that I read that they were even reports that they withheld the students. I keep saying students. I'm going to read another article. This video, I didn't mean for it to get this long, and I didn't mean for it to be so involved with this school, but you have to, and it really wasn't even a school. Like I said, it was more of a detention camp than anything. But in one article, some of the lawsuits involved was the fact that some of the residents there said that they weren't given their medication, that medication and food was withheld from them as punishment. So I doubt very much that they were allowed to just go out into the town and buy cigarettes. In the earlier part of this story, I talked about a Netflix show. That show was called Wayward. And it's very similar to what's going on here, where young troubled people were brought and deprogrammed in a way, but there's a twist to that, and I'm not going to give it away in case anyone hasn't watched it. But basically, it was one of these like deprogramming camps or touchy-feely type, get to know yourself, get back to nature. The parents believed that was what was happening, but what was really happening there was dark. And in the Netflix show, the whole entire town was in on this. Everybody in the town knew what was really going on there. They were all in some way covering for this camp. And there were allegations that some of the sheriff's officers and some of the local officials in this town surrounding this place, this Cedu, were covering stuff up. The only reports of these people going missing were given by the people that worked for the Cedu, and they were taking their word for it. They were not investigating. They said, I think it was something like 3 weeks after Daniel was reported missing that they even went out and searched for him at all. So how were tracking dogs able to, indicate his presence, as local police said? The Cedu School faced numerous allegations of abuse and mismanagement. This led to many lawsuits. I think there were something like 13 lawsuits. And they closed their doors and filed for bankruptcy in 2005. As of June 2025, Daniel Yuen remains missing. About John Christopher Inman, he was last seen January 16th, 1993 in Running Springs, California. Authorities say that he left voluntarily. Just like the others, his case remains unsolved. He was one more person that was really never searched for, and a lot of people believe that his case was covered up by the local police. A very large boy, or young man, I should say. He was 6'3" and 200 pounds. For them to subdue someone of that size, it probably took, some medication possibly, or force by 2 or 3 large staff members if he was out of control or anything like that. But they said that he had seizures and he took medication for those seizures. And he disappeared without his medicine. And once again, in this article, they have listed the Cedu School as a therapeutic boarding school for troubled teens. But after everything started to come out about this place, I think people realized it was really, a lot of people just saw it as a place to be making money. Troubled teens were sent there. In Daniel's case, Daniel was simply just depressed, mildly depressed. And in another article, this man writes this story about how he was also sent there. Now, in 2018, this man, his name was David Safran, he wrote an anonymous article and posted it online about the Cedu School and about his time spent there. So now this was an article that was written in LA Magazine, Los Angeles Magazine. This was posted 2022, this David Safran. Are police stifling the investigation into 3 teens who vanished from a residential controversial treatment center? So now here's the article that he wrote, and this was a young man who himself had spent some time there, and he wrote this anonymous article. And this police officer who was doing some investigating into the cold cases of the disappearances of these teenagers back in the 90s, she found this article online. This prompted this David Safran to come out of his anonymity and to come out and to tell his story. In late 2021, Alicia Rosa, a newly promoted San Bernardino County detective, came upon a startling fact while reviewing missing person cases. In 1993 and 1994, 2 teenagers disappeared from the Cedu School. Prior to its closure, Cedu existed for 40 years, and it was plagued by controversy and scandal. Cedu and its offspring programs were notorious for ritualistic abuse and emotional trauma. Just like I mentioned in the Netflix show Wayward, this took place at this place too, and these young people were forced into like hard labor, like moving rocks. It was a form of punishment. They would be made to move rocks from one location to another and then back and back and back, all while being withheld food and sleep deprivation. So now a fresh look at the Cedu and the disappearance of these teenagers. This man here says that I posted anonymously on Medium in 2018. Here is his story. In the winter of 1999, I was shipped from my suburban Chicago home to Running Springs compound as Cedu. I was misdiagnosed with mild depression. My parents read about the program. They were encouraged to get me some type of residential treatment. And according to their memory, they were reluctant to send me there, but they were being told how great this place was and how it would help me. And so they were hoodwinked. So he says that his parents believed that this was going to be kind of a touchy-feely theater camp type place where people would be outdoors and enjoying nature, and but it wasn't. It was not. It was run by people who were untrained. They had no knowledge in how to deal with depression or anything like that. He says this was an involuntary 2-year term. Many parents pull their children early. He himself says that his parents took off 8 months of his 2-year sentence. But for over a year, he was at this camp. He says he was stripped of his rights. He was blocked from even having access to a telephone. That's why I say I don't think this Daniel Yuen went out to buy cigarettes. And he says that the people there were decimated. They had complex punishments and around-the-clock experiment and group confrontation, screaming, humiliation. They had to confess. And one thing that he talks about is the forced cuddling. It was supposed to bring attachment to others, but he said it was just like forced upon you to be touched by other people, the counselors. And it was later discovered that some of these people had criminal records. Some were sexual abusers. But this man, he says he arrived back at his home in 2000. He says he stayed silent for 15 years. He kept this a secret, what went on there. He didn't tell his parents how bad it was. He says he realized that he had become haunted by this, but he became curious. And when he started reading stuff online about the lawsuits and stuff, he started looking into it himself. He says he found out that most of the people that worked there were untrained. And Detective Rosa found this article that he had written online, and he was doing his own investigation as a writer. And they both started looking into this. They both started doing their own investigations into this and what's going on behind the scenes. So he talks about these boys that went missing, and he says that they were considered softies. He talks about himself, that he was also considered a softie, someone who wasn't violent, who wasn't like there because they had extreme violent behavioral fighting or anything like that in school, but just people who were kind of internally struggling with depression. With Blake's case, it was more of a learning disability, learning disorder brought on by his handicap from this injury that he suffered as a child. And they were called softies because they were not violent. They were easily controlled by the people that worked at the school. These were the types of people that the Cedu School wanted. They didn't want to have to deal with violent behavioral disorder children. They wanted people who were just there because they kind of needed a little bit of therapeutic encouragement and training to be a little bit more social. They were softer kids, he says. And the parents were believing everything that they were being told. I'm sure that when these kids called home each week, they were probably being watched and listened to on the phone with their parents. They were probably telling them how great everything was and how well they were doing there. John's history is lesser known. His family has been elusive. They haven't wanted to talk publicly. It just says that he did suffer from a visual impairment and he had a seizure disorder. Just like Blake, both boys reportedly disappeared without their medication. John's exact length of time at Cedu School remains unclear. But it says that Blake was there for less than a month and Daniel was only there for like a week and a half. Cedu was not equipped to handle children with food allergies, depression, developmental disabilities, even though they told the public and the parents that they were. He says, I find it very unlikely that they left campus on their own. They would have come back because the terrain and the area around them was rocky and rugged and woodsy, and they either would have become lost, making it easier for them to have been found if anybody was actually even searching for them, which is telling if you think about it, because the adults, the police officers in the community, would have known how dangerous it could get for someone out in those woods. And if they thought for 1 minute that the kids are out there somewhere, they're going to go do search parties. I think that people kind of already knew there was really no point in wasting their time. Now, Blake's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Cedu, but she eventually dropped the case because they couldn't prove that he was dead. Daniel's parents succeeded in their legal action, but they settled quietly. They didn't tell what the details of the lawsuit, settlement was. And after about 12 more lawsuits came out against them, they ended up closing their doors and filed for bankruptcy. Among these accusations against them was reports that they knowingly misled law enforcement and lied to law enforcement and filed false police reports. And the police in the area refused to talk openly about it. They declined to speak with the media about what was going on there and about what the lawsuits were about, leading people to believe that they were kind of in the pocket. According to a legal document that Yuen shared with this writer, the San Bernardino Police Department refused to search for Daniel. It took threats of submitting misconduct reports, and they finally began to search the area weeks later, but they said they just did a courtesy check. They went out and they spoke to people who worked at this camp, and of course they weren't going to tell them anything. And so they just told the parents they had no proof at all that anything had happened to Daniel and that he had simply walked away. And they filed it as a runaway. That Cedu failed to give law enforcement information about Daniel, and they didn't have anything to go on, and this led to misdirection. They were told that he was a runaway. In John, Blake, and Daniel's cases and countless other incidents, law enforcement officers were gazing straight at and at times noting suspicious circumstances and wrongdoing, but they didn't go out and grill the staff. They didn't demand to be let onto the property to search, to see if there was any freshly dug up ground or anything like that. And they found out that Cedu had filed complaints against the police department. Anytime the police department would ask for, to talk to anybody there, they would file complaints against them, saying that they were impeding their work. And so police just quit fooling with them. Police just did not want to deal with them. And some people believe some of the police officers were actually helping to cover up some of this stuff. Cedu ultimately sued Wyatt, arguing that the nosy sergeant was causing residents to be removed by their families. Well, if he was looking into something that he thought was wrongdoing and he was bringing it to the public's attention and parents were hearing about this, they were going and pulling their kids out of there because they were starting to get reports that this place wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So they were losing money. This Cedu started to lose money. And California Department of Social Services noted recurring deficiencies and nonstop allegations. Some of the more serious violations were sexual, verbal, and physical abuse, violating the children's personal rights, inadequate staff background checks, and refusal to feed the residents. They were using food and medication, sleep deprivation, withholding sleep, withholding food, withholding their medicine as punishment. And this was supposed to be a place that was therapeutic. And I couldn't find a whole lot more about this John Inman. There was very little about him. I will post some of these articles and links that I found about this place if anyone's interested in hearing more about it. But as of right now, these three remain missing. That was really all I could find on them. Their stories lead to this Cedu, and there's more about that place than there is about these young men. If anyone has any information, you can contact the San Bernardino, California Sheriff's Department at 909-336-0600. Thanks for watching.